I just wondered if we could maybe start with a bit of an overview, just in terms of how, it works for you guys, really. Obviously, taking into consideration that, let's say for argument's sake, Tony and I have spoken to a business owner we've identified an interest in apprenticeships, for example. So really, I think it'd just be really useful for me to just understand from you, like, how that process would start, and, if you could just take me through that.
Do you want to know information on what Intec are, what we do?
I was going to say.
Yeah, I think if you talk about yourselves and what you do and all the rest of it, and then just talk about, like, as an example, the apprenticeship side,
and then the traineeship side,
or traineeships is how it would work.
Yeah, I think put in context from your end, Steve, in terms of who Intec are, what they can actually do, what you can't do. Where you're based.
That'd be really helpful.
And we're in the Semlep area. You've got your main office in Northampton. Are there any other offices in there?
Yeah.
So over to you, mate.
Okay,
so
cool.
A bit of a background in terms of
So I work for Intec Business Colleges, and we are a national independent training provider, established since 1982. Head office is in Rugby. And from there, we also have satellite offices in Northampton, Nottingham and Leicester. The main part of the company is we deliver apprenticeships. We also have a recruitment team as well, whereby they recruit apprentices into apprenticeship roles. The side of the company I work for is employment services, so we deliver, it used to be just IT courses to job seekers, but now that's opened up to a lot more. We've got ILM courses, leadership and team leading, management courses. We've got retail, business admin, customer service, event planning, to name but a few, retail. They're all remote, online.
So what level are they up to? Level
2.
Up to level 2, okay.
Yeah. And then we've got a classroom entry level 3 basic course and a level 2 employability IT course as well. So that's what the side of the company I work for. On top of that, we also deliver traineeships to job seekers. We currently work with NHS.
Okay.
In Coventry and Warwickshire. On top of that, we do, and then we look into growing that as well at the minute. So we, if we get a job seeker come to us, they're aged between 16 to 24, then we can do the classroom teaching as such in various subjects. Then we can also find the employer as well through our recruitment team, or we can work in partnership with an employer and manage the work placement that way. Then they can then move on to an apprenticeship if they wanted to, which again we can deliver.
Great. And the Northampton office specifically?
Yeah, so in Northampton we deliver, the classroom element is IT for job seekers. Like I say, it's like our satellite office. But now we can deliver remotely as well. So we've got nationwide coverage as well. But with regards to Northampton itself, we've been in Northampton for a couple of years now. Have you been over there yet?
I haven't, because
you should come over at some point.
The times I've been over, of course, are either when you came on the radio, it was like that, and it was shut down because of COVID. And so I will, now that you reopen, it'd be good to come over and see the guys, and obviously for Steve to come over and make relationships.
Come over,
start building that up in terms of referrals through the Digital Future First project, which obviously is designed to give you referrals for your programs.
Exactly,
to get outputs from employers that we're engaging with, mate. So it ties in very nicely.
Exactly. So like with Tony as well, we work with closely with the job centre in Northampton. And then we can signpost them as well. So, if we've got employers that we work with that want a trainee, we can then do the classroom teaching and then put them on over to you guys, for example, for you then to deliver the work placement.
Yeah, there's a nice little synergy backwards, isn't there? In that we're sitting here able to provide work placements without any problem whatsoever. We've got as part of our route map supporting people to get the necessary skills, get them back into work. And the biggest part of a traineeship that I know of is getting that employer to have the work placement. That's taken its red here, I think, from where we're coming from in terms of what we're trying to do.
It's our most difficult aspect is getting an employer on board.
I was going to say, what's the biggest challenges from provider's point of view?
It's going to be a lot easier now. I think before the government incentives now, where there's cash incentives for an employer to take a trainee on board, I think traineeships were looked down on because they were the pre-apprenticeship. Employers didn't really value them, and I don't think people knew about them.
Do you think they understand them as well? How many people understand them?
I don't think they do. I think there's
7
more.
years. 7 years have been around. Yeah,
They are. I don't think employers truly understand what an apprenticeship role is. That's where we come in to, go through that and explain what a traineeship is.
How can we help them understand the services better, do you think, Tony? How can we, what can we do with a business owner to help them understand this a bit better?
Good question.
It's weird because while you're thinking, we were talking through that the perception of apprenticeships is old school apprenticeships. It's all the Rolls Royce type hands-on mechanical, and of course there's over 500 different apprenticeship disciplines and frameworks and whatever you want to call them this week. And I don't think a lot of employers actually, the perception of apprenticeships is a 17-year-old coming in doing a 3 years hands-on, and it's very, very different now. I think the discussions we were having in terms of how do we help to get a quality referral where the employer actually gets this, because I know it's all about assess. It's all done in the workplace because I've worked within it for years. But 99.9% of employers, it's the word apprenticeship is what they think of their dad or their older brother or whatever. So what the main sort of perceptions coming across from employers from your end in terms of when you're doing apprenticeships, do you have to re-educate them?
I think the Levy itself, do you know about the Levy? I think the Levy has helped for employers to understand what the apprenticeship is. I think that's really
through the
helped.
supply chain from the larger ones or their own, from smaller ones, or
no, more for the larger organisations who are able to have
they've got the money
to get the Levy. And I think you're dead right. Actually, I think
it's going to be use it or lose it mentality.
It is, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So there is an intent there
Yeah.
to say that they want to use it. But I think for small businesses, they're not educated in actually this whole process.
And then I think that comes back to companies like ours, whereby, we've got a sales team and it's our role really to let you understand what the apprenticeship, the traineeship, what it does, because it is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
But it does have that. Well, we'll go back to what Tony says. It does come back to, it's the old school. My dad used to do, engineering apprenticeship, and it has moved on a lot more to that as well. And then you've got the EPA aspect as well. So, the R-graded distinction merit pass at the end of it. Training providers are measured on the outcomes of EPA.
So is it sales and service? There's this latent demand for people just saying, I need an apprentice or trainee, or is there actually, it's an education process in this sales role?
Bit of both.
Bit of both.
100%, yeah. Yeah.
And get back to your levy bit. Do you think the fact that large companies get charged a levy, which is basically 0.5% of turnover of more than 3 million, and some people like the NHS, it's £270 million levy money. So if you don't use it within 2 years as a big organisation, you lose it.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've now allowed 25% of this money to be pushed down the supply chain because the big boys weren't spending it. Either it was too painful to access it, or they just weren't, they weren't bothered. So have you seen any shifts in terms of the sort of the small and medium supply chain actually getting support from the large companies, or is that just a sort of...
No, I'm not seeing that at all.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I would go back to the Levy though, and talking about apprenticeships. I think the quality of an apprenticeship has gone up tenfold because of the Levy, because there's a lot more competition now for training providers like us to have the opportunity to deliver apprenticeship to a larger organisation, because we've got to go in bid now. Before, the company was using the apprenticeship, but they weren't that bothered really, because it's not their money, but it is their money now. So it's a lot harder for us now, and we've got to go through the whole tendering process as well. So
that's interesting.
I think that has really upped the stakes with regards to an apprenticeship and the quality, because whereby, I don't know, a large organisation would say, come in, deliver 10 team leading apprenticeships, for example. Now they will interview the assessors. They want to know everything. So is that person good enough to deliver training to my staff. And that's where it's changed. So I think the quality has gone up.
Do you think the standards have helped?
Yeah.
Because you know,
it's gone from framework,
Yeah, you know, in terms of, you know, employers are supposed to be, well, some employers have been involved and put them together. There's quite a few we know haven't.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting insight in terms of, I didn't realise it was that level where larger businesses have taken it properly. And are actually saying, if I'm going to spend this money, I want to get the most out of it. That's good.
But then obviously you know, the large companies we work with, for example, you know, it's them managing it, and it's more account management. So I think it has raised the standards, and then EPA as well, so the employers can see an outcome at the end. So that's all reflected back on them.
So how does it work with people who aren't quite going to be taken on for apprenticeships, and are there companies still out there who are going to say, right, do you know what? We'll offer traineeships as well as the precursor, you know, the starting point, which is where it was meant to be.
Yeah.
We do work placement for you. You're here. We've got apprenticeships running alongside it. Is that picked up?
Yeah, because what we've started to do, and we're guilty that we haven't done it previously, is whereby, because we've got the recruitment team, so we get a lot of CVs come through from interested people who want to do apprenticeship, but a lot of them aren't ready.
Yeah.
To do an apprenticeship yet. You know, they failed the interview. The feedback is that person needs that bit of training before they go into a job role, and that's where the traineeship comes in.
It's exactly
the traineeship is the stepping stone to an apprenticeship, 100%. So
it's interesting. From a business science point of view, we talk, you know, attitude and behaviour comes first because that needs to be there. Capabilities can come second because that can be taught. And yet there's a big expectation, I think, with a lot of employers, smaller, less educated employers in apprenticeships, that I just want to get somebody on the tools and make them as productive as quickly as possible, but that's not necessarily dealing with the issues.
It's going to affect the quality of what you get, 100%. And it's managing that, and the traineeship will prepare them for an apprenticeship. So for an employer, if you're taking a trainee on board, you need to be aware, you need to say to them, it can lead to an apprenticeship, because if you don't say that, then the trainee's not going to. Yeah, what am I going to get from it?
I agree.
You know, they're in it for themselves as well, and as the employer is, you know, we all want to help here. But I really do think you need to make sure that you offer an apprenticeship route, and there is a detailed route. Yeah. And then what happens after the apprenticeship?
Yep.
So, you know, we've got companies where we work with where they've done the traineeship, they've done the apprenticeship, and now they're in a management role within that organisation. So it's really important that employers progress, and they see that, because there's a lot of competition out there, and if that employer isn't offering that, then they go elsewhere.
And that is, for me, the biggest issue in small businesses, that those frameworks don't exist. So what happens is nothing happens, right? Not every business will have that.
Especially the smaller ones.
Small businesses, and as part of the Digital Future First project, is we're speaking to small businesses, small medium businesses, and if the business itself isn't providing that, who is? You know, where's it going to come from? I think there's that where a lot of failure happens in these smaller businesses, where the apprentice gets to the end of their term and says, actually, I'm just going to move on now, because.
And then you get the complaints from the employer saying, I've spent 4 years training you, and then you've just gone off and worked for my competition. And I used to say to employers, well, you look at yourself internally in terms of why did they leave, was the fact there was no progression route. And a lot of employers, it gets back to educating them from. Can I, quick, from your end, traineeships and apprenticeships, there's crossover, as I know, and then there's obviously things that are standalone in each. But do you mind just going through from your end a traineeship, how it works, where the bits are that you're offering within a traineeship, and then how that fits into the apprenticeship, and then we can come back in terms of the funding for the employers. And how that is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course. So
on the spot.
Yeah. I like it, yeah. So it's
like a job interview, mate.
I never knew this was happening today. You mentioned this before yesterday, did you?
I'll feed back to your boss, don't worry about it. He's a good lad, that lad.
So, I've lost my trail of thought.
Traineeship.
Okay, traineeship. So let's go. 3 elements to traineeship: teaching, functional skills, work placement. That's the 3 aspects for it. If they've got level 1, they move to level 2.
Quick run through what level 1 is, what level 1, level 2 is.
Level 2 is more your GCSE, A to C.
5 of them,
which is now, it's 9 to 1 in it.
D to G, or 6 to 9 in terms
6
of new
to
grade.
9 in it.
Basically, you haven't got 5 GCSEs, grade A to Cs. Yeah, they're education levels,
Yes, and then level 2 is kind of like a old school A to C. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's your level 2. So if they've got level 2, fantastic. They don't need to do functional skills for the traineeship and also the apprenticeship as well.
And functional skills are?
Maths and English. And ICT.
Yes.
Is that both Englishes or one English? Because kids take more.
Don't do literature.
No, it's language.
Just English language.
Just language.
Yeah. So we detail that first. Generally, it's the progression. So it's, they've got level 1, then we have to progress them to level 2. Okay.
However, as you well know, and I'm sorry, didn't mean to jump in.
Yeah.
Functional skills is a world in its own right, and I think it's you can get very complicated on this. But in terms of an employer, they don't see the ins and outs of it from training providers. And there are 5 levels of functional skills. There are pre-entry level 1, 2, 3, and there is level 1 and level 2. And, you've got people who are, there's a lot of people, especially some of the groups we work with from disadvantaged backgrounds, ex-offenders, long-term unemployed, people who just basically were not good at school. You'll find the level of English and maths. In this country, there are 7 million people in work with, they reckon, the average reading age of an 11-year-old because they just did not progress at school. And they tend to get very, very low to what's called pre-entry level. So you do your functional skills tests, 20, 30 minutes each one, and out of that comes where they are as the baseline. And the job of the providers, as I'm paraphrasing from you, please jump in, is to take it from pre-entry level, hopefully at least pre-entry level 1, is probably the lowest you're going to get.
Level 1,
progress forward, up to level 2. So you can see it's a fair old jump sometimes. And pre-entry level 3 is where somebody just doesn't understand English. That's probably my level of Polish. I can hear people speaking it, and that's probably as far as I can get. But we engage a lot of people culturally. Asian women, economically inactive, do not engage in programs. Their level of English, because of the culture, is probably at pre-entry level 3, pre-entry level 2. So as a provider, you've not just got a straightforward, you get people and give them functional skills. I understand the complexities of it, and it could be that the whole traineeship falls apart because the people that you've got coming through are so far back in their functional skills. You're going to have real problems getting them to level 2 in maths and English.
And those won't go on to a traineeship.
That's what I'm saying. So
that is a problem.
Yeah.
And that is a big problem because there's a big caseload out there which aren't in any form of, they're in NEET, aren't they? Not in any education.
And they're not getting the resale, they're not getting their functional skills, they're not getting it to the level they should. Yeah. And that's where, and the number of assessors and verifiers, there's less of that. So it's a perfect storm really for that group of people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's say we've got a group of people who, they're at least pre-entry level 1, or at level 1 in English and maths from your...
If they're at level 1, they've got to sit a test at level 1.
Yeah.
And then they can then go on to a level 2 on the apprenticeship. But they've got to do some element of functional skills with regard to traineeship. Work placement is 75 hours of work placement.
That's a minimum, isn't it?
Minimum. It was 100, but the government recently dropped that down to 75 to entice employers to take on trainees. There's no salary, there's no wage for that. Most employers we work with offer to pay travel expenses, lunch expenses, that type of thing as well. Classroom teaching, again, it's dependent on what course they're doing. There's no tests or exams like an apprenticeship. It's all done through assessment. So observation, questioning, work products. Do you know what they are? Should I go through them? Okay, so same as an apprenticeship. So there's different assessment style, assessment types within an apprenticeship. So an assessor will come out and observe a learner deliver a piece of work or deliver a presentation or, respond to a complaint from a customer. Now, the assessor observes that learner do that task, but then will also ask questions about what they've done. And then can also get a work product, so an email trail of how that, that complaint was resolved. Very basic but that's kind of like a basic understanding of the
it's competency and understanding, isn't it? At the same time, do you know what you do, basically?
Yeah. It's to prove that, but it is important that the employer knows that. So any salesperson going out it's their role to, we would expect any of our sales execs to go out and explain the process, because it's important that for you guys as the employer, for example, that you know the process, because then I'd be expecting the assessors to then update you after each visit. And we do like 12 weekly reviews as well with the employer as well, just so you know. Going back, so I'm waffling a bit. The traineeship side, again, it's classroom teaching. We're not teaching in a working environment that you are in an apprenticeship. It's classroom teaching. It's going back to employability.
Yep.
So we had a conversation earlier about, these people that aren't ready for an apprenticeship. So how are we going to get them ready for an apprenticeship? What skills are we going to teach them? That type of thing. So we go through all that. We go through like interview skills, CV writing, how to even complete an application form.
Is that mostly online now through Zoom and Teams, or do you have?
No, we can deliver it.
You do either.
Yeah. So there's a company. I've got a traineeship starting on Monday at an employer, and that is going to actually be virtual.
Sure, there's a mix.
It's all classroom. It's a mix, really.
We do a mix as well.
Yeah,
so.
and then it's that classroom teaching element, but it's working with the employer, because we've got to make sure that the units that are delivered match what's required in the job role that you're going to do. So, if you've got a digital marketing traineeship, we're not going to teach the person about
customer service, pure customer service.
Pure customer service. There will be an element of customer service, because I think every job role has customer service. Every job role you do. But it won't be like a customer service course.
So part of the traineeship, therefore, is a clear job description from the employer, even on a traineeship.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you find a lot of employers just haven't got job descriptions
for a traineeship? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find more for apprentices?
Yeah, because it's more of a defined role already. So there's mandatory units that need to be completed, and then there's optional units where they're fitted around the job description, the job role of what you're looking at.
And the aim surely is that, therefore, to make sure that person is competent, understands the role, so that the employer doesn't have to look over their shoulder every 5 minutes to make sure they're doing their job correctly, and it's doing it at a level where the company is getting the most out of that person, but the person's learned work ethics and also can do tasks and functions to progress.
Because, I think another thing that puts employers off is, if I get a trainee on board, then I've got to spend all my time training them.
That's the number one objection.
Yeah.
Isn't it? But what Tony said, I don't think that shouldn't be the case. You've still got your job to do. But yes, there is an element of hand-holding, but you still expect the assessor delivering the qualification to deliver the training. So when that person does come in and do the work placement with you, they can kind of like get on with it. But they would still require an element of support. But they shouldn't be sitting there with them 8 hours a day. But that's just
it's
disconnect there, isn't there?
There is, but it's like any job. If you put an application out because you want somebody to work in your business, you would by necessity do some form of training and support for that person and that's where the disconnect is.
Maybe the business owner abdicates a little bit, where they're just saying, "Well, hang on a minute, training's being dealt with, so I don't need to do it."
They do, because I'm getting me £1,000, and therefore that's all I hate to say it, I'm being quite cynical here. I'm helping out, but I sort of half want the job, or half want somebody to fill it. It's not desperate. I am absolutely going to have somebody. I don't care what's happening. So you get a lot of people who, as we all know, who are sort of on the cusp of doing things, who will take the incentives as the tipping point, but then the other side is, I haven't really got the time to do all this, or I'm a bit too busy, and I don't get it. And I think part of our role is education, because part of the DFF project, the Digital Future First project, is that education of employers. And it's education about what programs are available, what provisions are available, but also an education generally in terms of be an employer of choice. And I think that's where the opportunity really lies,
But then the employer, really should talk to the assessor, the training provider, on what type of role they're looking for. You've got to have the interview process. So you've got to make sure that person that is coming in, you feel. And I would suggest do a proper interview, do an open day.
For traineeships.
Yeah, for traineeships.
Absolutely.
100%. Because, you're going to have this person working with you 75 hours for a period. What you don't want to do is where a lot of trainees are going to come in low on confidence. Absolutely. Okay, so what you don't want to do is if you do like an open day where you get quite a few in, and then you select the top ones, really, what you don't want to do is then for them to, leave the traineeship halfway through, because that's going to send them right down to the bottom again. So it is a lot of responsibility for the employer, but then feel free then talk to the training provider on what you want or any problems, because then it's a training provider's role to train the trainee. Do you know what I mean?
And so some of these people that maybe we've gone through previously are brokers into your business. So if we think about some of the small organisations in our town, and those people would facilitate an apprentice, but they're not actually the provider necessarily. That sometimes feels how it's come across. But going back to this piece that is the business owner's responsibility to get these things in place to make a successful traineeship. For a small business, I'm not talking, let's say, a business of under 10 people, is when you talk about things like open days and that sort of thing.
The training provider does that.
Okay.
We wouldn't expect the employer to do that.
Got it.
That's good.
Yeah, so we can set that up, so I wouldn't worry about that, but we would need you to come in and participate. Because I want you to see.
They've got to put some time into it.
100%, yeah.
So I thought you were referring to
Oh, no, we wouldn't say, right, tomorrow, complete an open day, forget what you do. Was it fell off again?
No, I think it's good though. You've got premises in town, you've got premises here, but it is literally...
It's understanding, isn't it? Knowing what each person can bring to the party.
And making sure employers recognise it is a recruitment process, as if you were recruiting for a full-time or for a role anyway, not just I'll take someone as a trainee as a cursory.
I think that's how you do it. I think you can get them to buy in just by what Tony said there. That treat it as a recruitment process. Then they'll see the difference, I think. Yeah,
and the incentives to employers are
£1,000.
So now the question we always get asked: when do I get it? I don't know the answer, but I'll let you go on. So they get £500.
Yeah, they get it at the start, don't they? And then is it during an end?
It's during an end in terms of getting the payment back. So I've still got to work out what happens if they drop out, because I think there's a minimum amount of 75 hours, and after that you don't get the 500. But I'll clarify that. But from my end, it's some employers are not bothered about the money. Some employers, that's their sole focus, and our job, I think, is to take those employers and bring them back into a bit of a middle ground, which says, guys, sounds great. However, the long-term goal is other jobs, is there growth, is there real progression, it's somebody's personal life, their career. You help them, take them from where they are to where they want to be.
And I think it looks great for an employer if you're taking trainees.
Yeah.
For the local community, if you're known to take people who are, they're currently not in education, training, employment.
Yeah.
And they come through a company like yours, for example, and you bring them up and you take them through an apprenticeship, and then take them, further on, advertise that, promote that, and therefore you're going to get a lot better quality trainees, apprenticeships coming through, because they know that you are going to look after them, you are going to progress, because we do, unfortunately, get companies whereby they're just after the money, then don't really want to put any time into the trainee, so...
Lip service.
Yeah, exactly.